It's not only products, it's not only our goals, but it's also people who are going to help you achieve those goals. So it's already together. They are the engine of the whole strategy and vision. When you think of that human element, if people feel safe, clear, trusted, they speak up sooner, solve problems faster, take ownership, stay longer. So you are creating conditions and helping them and yourself to achieve those goals together. So this is the difference. You are not working alone. You're actually working together, and somehow we lose this connection. But we are not alone. And especially if you are a founder and if you are creating company, you are going to work with people, because leadership is about people and the space between people.
I'm Brandon Reed, and you're listening to Ready, Set, Startup, a podcast that brings you industry-tested perspectives from leaders working in all areas of the startup lifecycle, so you can learn from the wisdom that they've gained over years in their fields of expertise and apply it in your own entrepreneurial journeys. Let's get into it. On today's show, I'm talking with Aya Jokub. After beginning her career in digital marketing, Aya began to notice something. Connection with others, as well as connection with ourselves, seemed to be a critical part of what made the difference between effective and ineffective leaders. It was such a powerful insight for her that she decided to pivot her focus and begin a deep course of study on this exact topic. She's currently crafting her dissertation on connected leadership and has gone all in on business psychology and the research around why and how relationships drive every aspect of our working life. I found our conversation absolutely fascinating. Aya is a different kind of guest than I normally have on the show. We didn't talk about the systems that she's putting in place to scale growth by 200% year over year. We didn't discuss how to analyze and predict if a startup will 10x and exit profitably. We talked about people, about connection, nervous system regulation, and practical strategies for how to get yourself grounded and self-aware to become the best leader you're able to be. In a world that is increasingly disconnected and driven by technology, I think this is a timely and important topic to cover, one that is applicable across every industry, role, and skill set. If you want to lead effectively and sustainably, then the research that Aya expands on in our interview is something you can't afford not to consider. But first, let's set the stage with what relational leadership even is. Aya describes what it means to lead from a place of authentic connection with others and with yourself, and ultimately, why that matters.
Yes, and you mentioned an interesting point and very usual point, that is soft skills. And this is probably going to be my goal, to show that it's not so soft. It's actually a strategic point. So let's first set the stage and see the difference. How we understand traditional leadership. Traditional leadership models are usually about what a person has, like their title, their personality, their list of skills. We treat leadership like a set of rules that a person has and use on everyone else. And relational leadership theory explains leadership not as a formal role, but as a dynamic, emergent process arising from social interactions. So in this view, effectiveness depends on relational influence rather than hierarchical power. And relational leadership focuses on the connection between people. It's more like how we work together. It's something you practice with yourself and others. So I would say it's less about how do I manage people and more about how do I create the conditions where people can do their work best.
I have so many questions we will go into specifically about the difference really here of like what you're framing up, why this is different, and why it's this different way of viewing it is valuable. Let's first and potentially profitable for companies to look at. But let's talk specifically about you and your interest in this space. What drew you to it? Why did you, and I will have covered this kind of in the intro so people are aware of it, but you are doing your dissertation now in this
Hmm.
space. What drew you to this? Why this course of study? Why did you want to learn more about this?
Yes, so my dissertation focuses on connection, more specifically, how does connection with self enable leaders to connect more effectively with others and shape their leadership impact? So it's not just a relational leadership, even though it's a part of the topic. So I studied the link between a leader's inner world and their outer results. So basically, I'm looking at how that internal connection becomes the foundation for everything a leader does, and why I was so invested in this topic and why I wanted to start and to do this dissertation. The answer for me is very easy, actually, because I have been learning this for many, many years through different fields of my life, and dissertation is just a way to explore it in a more scientific way, to find more articles, research studies, how other authors, researchers analyze this. So it's very fascinating.
Mhm.
And I spent 10 years in digital marketing before I entered business psychology. And digital marketing, who, like everyone knows, is a very stressful, fast paced, high pressure world. And it taught me so many things, especially how leaders' own disconnection creates negative ripple effects across the whole team. So this high stakes and high pressure environment affects decision making, performance, energy, psychological state. And in these pressured moments, it's not anymore about your traits, about your
Mm.
knowledge. It's about your capacity and internal resources to be able to manage this complexity.
Yeah, fascinating. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
Yeah, because the world is not going to be easier or simpler.
Uh huh.
It's only going to be more complex. So we have to build that capacity. And that capacity is not, as I mentioned, it's not only about knowledge and trade skills. It is about that, of course, but it's also about your inner resources, how you manage that.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point that like the world's yes only getting more complex, and we as individuals are only becoming, I'm sure as you see, we're only becoming more disconnected with ourselves,
Yeah.
with how we feel, and to the points you've been making of like the more connected we are with ourselves, the more connected we can be with our teams, the more effective we can be, and we're all learning how to, I think, manage in the chaos and the busyness of our lives today, how to remain connected with ourselves. I think when founders and when people who are building their businesses, when they think about leadership, often these people are starting their companies and they are it may be for the first time ever in a leadership position, actually driving people forward, casting vision and strategy, and getting people aligned to a common goal. This might be the first time they've ever done that. And I think when they think about, all right, what does it mean to be a leader? They think of the most common things of like, hey, decisiveness, like
Hmm.
strategy, confidence. Where does the human element of your line of study and work, where does that come into that when founders think about, okay, I want to be an effective, good leader to build my company and build my team? How can you reframe that for people who are just kind of maybe doing this for the first time so they can
Hmm.
think about it differently as they get started?
This is a very, very good question. And vision, strategy are important. And we all know it's going to be important always. But the interesting part is relationships and those connections, people are in vision and strategy. We already are there. So it's not a separate thing. When we are planning something, we are creating that vision. In that vision, it's not only products, it's not only our goals, but it's also people who are going to help you achieve those goals. So so it's already together. They are the engine of the whole strategy and vision. So when you think of that human element, if people feel safe, clear, trusted, they speak up sooner, solve problems faster, take ownership, stay longer. So you are creating conditions and them helping them and yourself to achieve those goals together. So this is the difference. You are not working alone. You're actually working together, and somehow we lose this connection, but we are not alone. And especially if you are a founder and if you are creating company, you are going to work with people, because leadership is about people and the space between people.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you say that so clearly that like leadership is about people, and I think often it takes time for people to understand that. I think often, again, if people are doing it for the first time, it can feel like leadership is this isolated, siloed thing at the top in which you have to make your decisions, move with confidence, cast clear vision, and then communicate that down. Like you kind of do the leadership piece on your own, and then tell everybody else how to execute on those things as a leader. And you're saying it's much more collaborative than that. It's much more connected than that. And that's a really interesting point. Startups operate so differently than these larger, more established organizations. I did the first 10 years of my career at Disney, big company, and operates very differently than a startup. And so there's many more levels of management or leadership between you and maybe who's ultimately you kind of tier up to. How do you see it working differently in startups versus large organizations? And how do leaders in both of those areas, how can they approach this and do what you're saying effectively? How does it differ?
I think in general, how you connect, relate with self, others, ideas, projects, environments, systems is important everywhere. So it's a universal thing, and it applies no matter where you are.
Definitely.
But I agree with you also from that point that startups, maybe even in startups, it matters more because everything is fast, uncertain, and personal. So it's a very complex environment. And usually the whole system relies completely on the relationships. So trust, emotional stability from the founder, clarity under pressure becomes paramount and can determine success, because everything is from the beginning is based on relationships. You don't have products yet, you are creating, you are building, like it's super stressful, super fast. So you have to rely on each other, you have to trust each other. So it's very important how you create that space and how people feel in that space.
Absolutely. I think you make a really good point that that things in startups, yes, they move quickly, but that you use the word personal. Things are very personal. Relationships are very close. You're spending a lot of hours together. There's not like it. There might even kind of be some of those walls broken down of like maybe more of a formal workplace. Maybe you're working all day together, and then you go grab drinks after work together, and you're talking about work there too. And those lines are blurred a bit, and things become very personal. And so connectedness both with others and with yourself has got to, like you said, just be more important in those situations. I do want to double click, kind of look a little bit closer at this piece of, we've talked about connectedness with others and making sure that the relationship is there and solid with others, but with yourself. And I really want to talk more about that kind of interconnectedness. That's a space that I'm super interested in. As my company Dwellspring kind of works in that space a bit of self-reflection, meditation, mindfulness, and so it's a bit interconnected. I'm interested in this idea of how can leaders. I mean, I kind of actually want you to frame, how do I frame this question in a way that keeps it open? Because I don't want to guide it too much. I really just want to hear your thoughts in general on what it means to be connected with yourself and how that makes you a more effective leader.
Yeah, I'm completely getting what you want to ask, because this was the first question what I was exploring in my study. I wanted to gather the vocabulary of the participants, how they experience self-connection. Because when we think about self-connection, it feels very abstract. It can be anything, right?
When you think of self connection, people think it's abstract and almost. I bet there's a lot of people who are very unfamiliar with the space that think it's like not a thing. It's like, what do you mean? I don't have time to like sit there in a yoga pose before I start my day. Like it's so abstract, it may not even really feel real. So I bet that's something you come up against. All right, continue.
Yeah, exactly. And what's the most interesting part is that my research and study shows that it's not only yoga position, meditation, or mindfulness, which leads us to think about those practices and activities. But actually, people framed it into many different ways, and I can state in three parts. And I would say one is somatic experience. So they experience self-connection through the body. How, for example, walking in the nature, breathing, grounding, doing even going into the gym. Some participants explain it self-connection doing physical exercises.
Mm-hmm.
Then the next part is emotional acceptance. So you accept your mistakes, you accept your emotions, you monitor your emotions, you understand your emotions. So this self-awareness allowed participants to connect with themselves better. And the third part was more cognitive, it was a reflection. So participants were journaling, writing their thoughts, analyzing their thoughts, so thinking more. And that part also allowed them to connect. And also in my research review, I saw some articles which explains that mindfulness cover usually just several parts, but there are three main parts which helps us to connect with ourselves. So it's emotionally, cognitively, and through the body. So all those things has to, like, for we are different, and for each of us it can mean different thing. And the most important thing is to explore what helps you to connect with yourself.
Yeah, that's really great. There's these different ways that you can connect what works for you. Where can people even where would they get started if if they hear those kind of broader categories of, okay, I can understand you can connect with your body, you can connect with your mind. Where can people get more information about those types of genres of things if they're interested in this kind of thing?
I would say, first of all, people have to experiment and
Yeah.
find what helps them connect with themselves. So it means through self connection, what you experience. Like, you are more self aware. Do you notice your emotions? Do you feel more grounded? Like, what's happening? And you can explore it through different activities. For example, I'm really a huge fan of yoga, meditation, and mindfulness, but also I like just walking, do very huge path of walking, like 10 kilometers, for example. And when you walk a lot, you start clearing your mind, relaxing, and etc. That's how you start grounding and connecting with yourself. But it's my experience, for other people can be completely different. As I mentioned it, some people say they go into the gym and they feel connected. So you have to explore and you have to try different things, what allows you to connect, clear your mind, calm down. And for example, your business is also, I would say, doing this part of connection, because for some people it's purely relaxation. Then you relax your mind, then you completely relax. Practice deep self meditation, sleep exercises, listening to those sounds. It helps you connect.
I think also one thing that we found as we kind of look at the business space of what does Dwellspring and the sounds we produce like look like in the workplace, that there's a whole line of self-connectedness. What do you do? What are the intentional acts you do to connect with yourself, become more self-aware? And a piece of what we offer is the masking of distractions, right? So like that can be anything that you do to help you connect, like can be hindered by a distracting environment. And so, like, what are some things you can do to, whether that's sound or finding even like silence, like a quiet space? What are those things you can do to be conducive, or going on a walk? What are the things that kind of
Mm.
are the things that connect you to your connectedness, like that are that allow you to actually step into that space? I think that's really good. As I hear you talk about those things of what, because I was actually going to ask that exact question you answered of what does self-connectedness look like? I hear that term, but like you're like, okay, but you started describing you are aware of your thoughts, you are self-aware, you feel grounded. And that still feels almost if I struggle with this as a founder or just anybody, if I struggle with this, it might be hard for me to picture what that looks like, of what that feels like if I haven't experienced it or experience it, not often, of a self-awareness and a groundedness. So let's try to define the opposite. Let's say, like, what does it look like to not be self-connected? I think people might connect maybe more with that if they're not experiencing this very often. Maybe those are the kinds of things like, oh, well, I do feel that. Like that. So what is the opposite? What is somebody who's not self-connected? What are they feeling?
Yeah, and in my study, participants described it through impact, what they feel, what happens when they are with other people, and in their leadership effectiveness. So they noticed things like more reactive, more urgent,
Mhm.
more distractive. So you are actually becoming more chaotic, and you are transmitting this state to your team. So this is a
Mm.
huge disconnection because it doesn't create psychological safety. And this is the most important thing what can happen in the team or not happen. So I would say chaotic reactivity, all those things.
All things that as a leader you don't wanna be. Anybody could say that. You don't wanna be reactive, you don't wanna be urgent. Why is that the case? Why when someone's disconnected, we don't have to go into all the science of it, but what is some of the physiology or even just the psychology around why a disconnected leader reacts, reactively or urgently or in an unkind or an angry way? Why does that manifest itself like that?
It's biological thing. It's our nervous system regulation. So if you don't regulate yourself and your nervous system, this is how you become more reactive, defensive, urgent, and chaotic. So the goal is to regulate. And actually, this one thing, nervous system regulation, was the most mentioned thing of my participants in the study. They mention it only when they regulate themselves, nervous system regulation. Create, they behave less reactive, and then they create psychological safe environment. So these all are connected very deeply.
For sure, and I bet anybody can whether you're tying it, as people listen, whether you're thinking of this directly in your work environment and thinking, "Oh, when I'm connected, I respond more patiently or more effectively." Just think about even not in the workplace, just in your life. Like if you feel safer, if you feel more at peace with yourself, if you feel more grounded, think about how much more pleasant your life and your relationships and your connections are to others around you. I mean, that would directly relate, I think, to the business to your business life as well. If you feel
It's
grounded, you respond
it's
more
it's
better.
very, very huge relationship between these connections. Very, very huge.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this is a natural kind of segue into kind of the next question. We're talking about this reactivity, this urgency. I think often when you hear a word like urgent in a startup, I think that a lot of leaders who aren't yet fully bought into this, don't have their head around how this works for them or why it would be helpful. They hear the word urgent, they're like, yeah, in a startup, everything is urgent, and that is an advantage. Like if we react with urgency, if we move quickly, that's an advantage. In fact is not something we can afford not to do. To be urgent and reactive, and so how would you talk? How do you talk to somebody like that who thinks that that is an important part of their business to help them understand that in fact, won't slow the business down? That won't be a disadvantage to not react urgently or in this way.
Urgently, yeah. And I would say here we have to reframe how we understand the whole thing. And, in terms of relationships, also, like if we frame urgent, how can leaders prioritize relationships without slowing the business
Hmm.
down, right? So we have to understand and reframe it. It's not about adding more time, spending more time, or like about connections, having more coffee meetings, doing activities together. All these are superficial things for connections. They are important, of course, and we need to do it to create those relationships. But I would say it's more like additions that help create those connections and relationships stronger. But what actually is and what actually helps is when we understand that we connect biologically, and this shapes the whole picture. Because what it means, for example, let's talk about very simple thing, communication. So we have to communicate, right? So it's not a communication framework, like step-by-step script, what you have to say, but more how you communicate. It's more about your quality of presence and being. So when we understand this, that we connect biologically, not by what we say concretely, we can understand this and move from quantity, adding more time spent with other skills, frameworks we learned, to quality. How I am showing up in that moment, I am already in. So if you are urgent and everything in startup moves very fast, so you don't have to think about this, oh, I have to create more coffee meetings to connect with people better. No, it's not about that. Like it's okay, it's nice, it can help you. It's not about additional framework or skill you how you will what you will communicate. It's more how in those moments when you need to show up, you will be with those people, because it's biologically connected, biologically connections happening. So it means, again, we are coming back how you regulate your nervous system. Very simple example. Before reacting, taking 30 seconds to pause and look to the problem and not react immediately. So it creates all this, as we mentioned it previously, all this nervous system regulation creates psychological safety for the whole team. And then listening fully, not multitasking, So
Yeah.
someone is saying to you something and you're pretending you're listening, but actually you're doing many other things. So this is not quality presence for the people. Also, alignment with your own values and business, so you can communicate more clearly what you need, what we as a team need to achieve. And lastly, I would say authenticity, showing your true self, or that you are not the only one who knows the whole answers. So it creates trust and allows people behave the same. So here, the most important thing, what I'm trying to say, is to move from quantity, how to spend more time with people, creating those relationships, to more quality, being in the present, more with more quality. So those moments actually speed things up later because they reduce confusion. At this moment, you are thinking, oh, why I need to invest this quality? Like it doesn't matter, but it matters. It actually matters because the science shows us that we connect biologically, and it's important how we are together.
Wow, there's so many good things there. I wrote down so many questions. I'm like, how do I even get loop back to all these? There's so many good points you just made. One thing that I love that you talked about is, well, geez, where do I even start? One of them was kind of the honoring, how you can honor others with the fullness of your presence and like actually being there. Boy, today it's just so common to like people, they sit down in meetings, they open their laptops, and it's just expected that they're talking to you and doing other things, and they're not present. And there's a group that I'm a part of with a bunch of entrepreneurs, and it's a large organization, but we have a smaller group of people that meet intentionally every month. We spend 4 hours in a room. We put our devices away and
Hmm.
separate, and we just have like pads and papers and pens, and we just pay full attention to each other. And the
Hmm.
thing that I always mention about that is how honoring that feels. That like when I speak, I have people's full attention. And you can do that for others. You can honor them with your full attention. And boy, if I sit down in a meeting and it's not a situation like that where it's expected, it's just another meeting, and someone gives that to me, like gives me their full attention, that is, it shouldn't be so honoring, but it is today with how distracted people are, that I'm like, man, you're fully here with me. And that builds immediate trust for me as an individual. And I found when I was at Disney, and in management and leading people, that was always something that I could do to build trust quickly and early. Was like when I'm with somebody, I'm with somebody. And I think that talks about, or that's a good way to mention another point that you made that I loved, of that this is not about, I think it's such an important piece for founders and anybody to understand. This is not about more. This is about better connection. This doesn't mean you now have to fill your calendar up with coffees. It might mean you keep the same coffees, but those coffees are more present, more effective. It might mean that you're doing this connection in the meetings you're already having, like they're better, more quality time, and that can build this safety and trust, and doesn't have to be extra time in your calendar. And I think that's probably a really important barrier to get over.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, for sure. So I love that. I there's several other pieces in notes I took, but for the sake of time, we'll move through that. I loved all that you just mentioned. Um, what does this look like? What does it look like to build deep connection with others and with yourself, so that you can do that with others? But specifically, building the human element of your relationship with somebody else, rather than just the authoritarian, which you mentioned that term early on, or the hierarchical. That's what you said. The hierarchical, like I am your boss, so we will sit and have this meeting. How do you balance those two things when you when you have to have difficult conversations, like performance issues, or there's conflict, letting somebody go? How do you balance that with also saying like, but we're connected. I'm connected with myself. I'm present here with you. We have a deep, trusting relationship. Maybe not letting somebody go. Let's not necessarily go that far, but like performance issues or some other conflict. How do you balance those two things?
So, if we see everything from the point of connection with self, with other systems, and we already spoke about this, and my dissertation research shows that this connection allows us to create psychological safety, trust, empowerment, clarity. So, and this is exactly the environment where people are more open to difficult conversation. So
Hmm.
actually, it becomes easier. They become less defensive and capable to see feedback more developmental, less threatening. Conflict becomes a honest conversation. So, you know, it doesn't require specific management. It's the condition you are creating, and in that condition it becomes easier to manage, like it's the consequence of that condition it's the consequence of psychological safe environment.
Yeah, that's really, really good. Because I kind of had another thought and question around like authority, accountability. How are you holding people accountable? How do you, without a more firm and rigid structure of hierarchy, a relationship that's more relational, more connected? How do you do all that? And that's a really good point that you're saying. Like those things actually become easier. It's actually not an obstacle. It's not like, oh, how do I still maintain a sense of authority that needs to be there? That sense of authority is more built in. It comes easier for people to understand, which is really good. And yeah, makes a ton of sense to me. And I think that anybody, if you think about your working relationships and previous bosses that did relational and connected leadership better, that you would say, yeah, you respected them more, you respected their authority and leadership more than the boss who just pushed everything from the top down and didn't do it this way.
I think, in terms of authority, we also have to frame how we see the relational leader, because it's not about being nice or losing your authority. It's because it's not like black or white, it's all together. It's just inside. It's like process how you are
Mhm.
showing up. So you still set expectation and make decisions. There is still tasks and everything. The difference is how you show up and how you get results. You can be very direct and just give people tasks so they can go and execute. But here is the key, like people are more productive, motivated, respect their leader, and more willing to follow when they feel safe,
Totally.
especially psychologically safe. Then they feel trust, when they feel transparency, clarity. And this is only possible to achieve by creating those conditions, and connected leadership is actually what helps to achieve it. So it's not, one or another, it's together. And you can build much stronger authority, healthier environment, bigger results achieved when you are building it together with people, because this becomes even bigger power.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, what every leader wants, especially visionary leader. Because
Hmm.
if you have, one small middle goal, maybe you are not investing so much in the future. But if you have strong vision, you want to go really long path, you are going and you will need to invest and care about people who are together with you, because you are going to work together with the shared goal, and you have to build this motivation. And one thing what I wanted to mention now in terms of AI,
Hmm.
many people, say now we are going to work less with people and more with AI, with
Hmm.
automation, robots, and everything. And I think in this case, actually, even though we are going to work more with robots, let's say this way, right? But human connection is going to be even more important scale, because we are going to lack that. We are going to lose our skill how to connect actually more naturally and more authentically. So I think the leaders who are going to invest in this, how to connect better, how to relate, they are going to achieve more, even in the age of AI.
I couldn't agree more. It's a really, really good point. I think all people have to do is think about the AI point's very interesting. To go to your earlier point, all the points you're making around how this is actually a more effective way to lead your teams, to define that authority, for accountability to be in place. All you have to do as an individual is think about the past leaders that you've had and who have done this better, and how much more connected and how much better that working relationship was. And I don't know why it's so hard for us to then turn that around if we're in the position as a leader to like say, oh, my previous leaders who did that well were my best leaders, so I'll do that. There's a bent that we often have to just yeah, do it the other way. Let me wade a little bit into the waters. You started talking about AI, which is very interesting. Of like, how do we do this today? Another kind of point right now that's very prescient with where we're at is hybrid work. Right, is this idea of in person or virtual work, and that's happening right now. Over the last few years, it's become, of course, with COVID, so much more common. What does it look like, and do you see any barriers with hybrid work or just fully remote work to this ability to be connected to the people you work with?
Yeah, of course, there are some barriers, like you don't see people, face to face. So all this, like relationships and connections, they must be intentional. Of course, there's no any other way. So you have to create specific moments, not just for updates, but for real check-ins. And but also, as I mentioned previously, it's not only, creating those coffee meetings or additional meetings, it's actually how you are being in those meetings. So even your
Mhm.
email, even your written communication you are going to send to your colleague,
Mhm.
makes a lot of sense how you communicate in that email. And grounded, clear, self-connected, calmer leaders communicate differently, even in emails. Even, so sometimes we think
Totally.
like we have to do something specifically, so it's more additions, but actually everything starts from yourself. But of course, like in another point, in hybrid and remote teams, which I also experienced in my past experience, was lack of communication. So it
Yeah.
has to be solved, it has to be more transparent, more often. You are not going to skip this step, because it's really important in hybrid and remote teams. Yeah, and I would say reducing ambiguity is really important in these settings.
Couldn't agree more. I think that when you don't have those hallway conversations and the proverbial water cooler conversations of like passing in the halls, when you're not touching base that often, when conversations are maybe more infrequent throughout the day, more structured, you have these 30 minutes to talk with this person, that it's not that the individual is not making assumptions about your relationship. It's not that they're not getting off the call and then thinking, how did that go, and what did I feel. It's not that those things aren't happening. It's that when you do not step in and communicate and reduce the ambiguity, to use your term, then that void is filled with other person's thoughts and often their anxieties around like, oh man, this isn't going well, and he doesn't trust me, and whatever. But if you're able to articulate and fill that void with your words and your thoughts about those things, that's just always going to be better. And I love your point about that doesn't have to be an in-person face-to-face conversation. It can look like an email. It can look like a Slack message. It just needs to be communicated, which people don't do.
Intentional. Yeah, intentional. And
I don't know what all you can share around this, but anything from your studies, your dissertation, kind of as you've been really pressing into this, anything that's surprised you, anything that has jumped out as like, whoa, we were not expecting that from our survey results or from the people we talked to, anything you've learned in that way?
yes, yes, actually a lot. Like I am still in the process, right? So,
Hmm.
so probably there are more things that will come. But what I can already share and see from my own research and literature research. So actually, my research just complements the previous researches about relational leadership theory, that the whole effectiveness happens and leadership happens in the space between people. And my research also shows the process, the mechanisms, how the connections form, like how you move from self connection
Mm.
to connection with others, and how you achieve leadership impacts. And I already shared you one mini story, like from nervous system regulation, you reduce your reactivity. So this is how you show up with others, and you create psychological safety. So this is one example of how it works. But in general, if I have to sum up everything, so it's showing that the leadership impact is an internal external process, meaning that their own ability to connect with themselves allowed better connection with others that lead to improved leadership impact. So this all, helps us to understand that everything starts from ourselves. All the leadership, it's not, only about skills, not about traits we have. So we usually say like, this is emotional intelligent leader, this is mindful leader. But this research gives us to understand that it's not descriptive what or like what type of leader he or she is, but it's the leader who practices mindfulness, who practices emotional intelligent breathing, groundedness. It doesn't matter what, but it's more like we are moving to specific actions, what leaders do. So it helps us to create concrete action plans, how to improve leadership.
I love that. I love all those points. That it's more internal, or that you found that there's a lot of internal connection. When we first hopped on the call and we were walking through some of the questions, you had said, "Hey, we were talking. Your questions were a lot around relational leadership. I want to talk a lot about connected leadership because connected looks inward too." And I loved that point, and that's definitely how you've driven this conversation of like it doesn't just matter how you're connected to others; it matters how you're connected to yourself. And I think it's a big takeaway for people.
Internal external process, like it's not
Yeah,
stagnant one
right.
state or one trait, like it's a process, it's like consistent movement, and your ability in that movement to create those conditions for yourself and your team.
For sure, for sure. Let me move us into just a couple closing questions here. As
Yes.
you work in this space, I know you speak with a lot of people, whether they are founders who are building companies, entrepreneurs, or just people in the workplace. I mean, what's a question related to your research, related to your work, when you say, "Well, this is what I do, what I'm studying, what I'm looking at." What's a question that you get asked the most? What do they tend to ask you the most, and what are they not asking you, but you believe they should be?
The question, like in general, what I noticed in the field, in
Hmm.
leadership, in everything, and from what's coming from the founders, that they see their teams as the units you have to optimize. So the
Mm,
question always comes how to make my team more productive, how
right,
to
right.
optimize them to do more things
Yeah,
and
yeah,
do it more effectively. So we are looking not into humans who are alive, who have
right.
emotions, who are moving and experiencing things. We are looking into just units which we have to optimize. And we imagine that leadership is just bringing this people is with that traits, capability, skills, and that is with that. So if we merge
Yep.
them, they are connect or not connect. Like this, all are true. This is also true. But the other layer, I would say, is to look at leadership from you as an anchor, how you influence that as a person, as a leader, how your biology, how your nervous system regulation, your internal capacity, emotional capacity to handle this complexity influence your leadership. So I think this is the question we should be asking more, how my own how my own influence, state, behavior, process of all those connections influence my team and how I can change. If I am here, the moving part, how I can change that.
Yeah, I think that that makes a lot of sense that founders are like, yeah, oh, great. You talk about how to be connected to your team. How do I connect with my team in a way that maximizes output and efficiency and, and optimizes all that? It's interesting. And yeah, that also ties directly into what should they be asking, but they aren't. And that makes sense to me that leaders, especially I would imagine founders that take the route of venture capital, who take other people's money to build their companies, it kind of supercharges that like grow, 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 optimize, optimize mindset. And I bet that would throw them into that much more quickly of like, okay, I got to hit these numbers. I got to please these people. I got to, pay off. I got to get these investors their money back. I would imagine that would make you tend to feel more of just like, how do I optimize? How do I squeeze every amount of growth out of these people rather than thinking about it like a human connection?
Yeah, and this all proves that actually this human connection is not a soft skill, because when you think
Yeah, it's a good
strategically,
point.
which one creates more results, conscious results in the longer term, it's always the leader who is capable to relate with self and others. It's
Yes.
always like that. And, this just proves that if you want to go longer path, if you have vision, you have to see this not as a soft skill, but actually as your really important strategy for everything what you do, because this is how people behave. This is how people feel motivated, how they are productive. If you want to learn that, it's not that you are pushing with your strength, with your directiveness. It's actually about being more human and being more connected and being more together in everything.
I really love that. I think that that'll be an important thing as you continue this conversation. You're talking with people that it's, I guess, technically it's a soft skill and that it's like not a, yes, it's a relational skill, but to reframe it, to not think it because
Mm,
you know what people think when they think soft skill. And you're like, don't think that. Like, this is much more strategic. This is much more
mm,
of a strategy than it is just like an idea,
mm.
and I bet that that would be an interesting reframing, a nice to have. It's not a nice to have. We're past that. The science shows us that this is not a nice to have. This is something you need to develop and curate it as a
Mm.
leader. I ask this question of all my guests. I say, like, bring yourself back to the beginning of your career. What would you do differently through your career? I want to reframe it a little bit with you, actually, as we've had this discussion. I think this would be more helpful to say, what about at the start of your research? If you could go back to the start of your research and start it again, start your dissertation again, jump into this chapter of your career, now knowing more of what you know, how would you have approached your research and your study differently with the knowledge that you have now?
I would say, like, maybe I would like to answer it a bit more broader, not only with the
Mm,
research or dissertation, because I think it's very important. And one keyword would be application, because, we gather a lot of knowledge, skills, we learn through all those years. And we just stuck in that state of learning, and
yeah.
we keep that knowledge in ourselves. So if I have to turn back and have that knowledge, I would start applicate it just right away, because sometimes we feel some things is a common sense, but we just don't practice it until we prove it. At least it was my experience.
Mhm.
Some things I felt like, oh, it's a common sense, it's easy to do or easy to understand, and then I still needed to approve it. For example, I started this dissertation to prove to myself that there are scientific resources and other researchers who can prove relational leadership, connection with self, and all those things. But the real value is when you apply it into your life. So you have to practice it yourself. And as soon as you can start it, so the more benefits you can get, not just stuck in that learning stage. So I think it would be a tip for myself if I have to come back.
I love that. I think that that's so true that so many people get stuck in the learning phase.
Mm.
Like, well, I'm just learning this, I'm getting my head around it, and never actually get to application. I just finished Snowball, which is the biography on Warren Buffett, and who's a famous investor. And I mean, obviously, as an investor, talks about the magic of compounding, of how it's important to invest early, to get started right away, because compounding is actually the magic that makes you wealthy. It's not even the decisions along the way, it's the patience to like let the money make more money. And it's just that stood out to me here too, is just the idea of like, if you apply it early, the knowledge that you gain, the relational equity you're gaining with the people you work with, that will compound. And it's not just a year over year increase, it's like 1 year and then like 1.5 times, then 3 times, then you're getting these the benefits more and more as you go, because it will compound. I imagine that would be very similar in a space like this.
Yes, 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 I agree.
Okay, so last question here. What's one tool or quote or book, something that I have found indispensable to you, either personally or professionally on your journey?
Yeah, in terms of books, actually, I have a lot of them now, and most of them are very psychological at this state of
I'm
my
sure.
life. But one thing, maybe what I could share and what I really like is a quote. And this quote I use in every situation. I think it's very relatable to business and other fields as well. Is where your attention goes, results show. So if you want to achieve better connections, communication with people, you have to actually care of those people. You have to invest
Yeah.
your quality, not necessary time. So you see results there. If you invest in your business, if you learn the specific topic, your results start show in that area as well. So I think this is very applicable in different fields.
I love it. I love that quote. I think it's really powerful. This was really, really great. Like I said, a little bit of a different approach than I normally take about like, how did you build your business? I'm asking you, how can leaders build their businesses better and build their relationships with the people around them better? And I love the idea of like, this isn't a nice to have anymore. We're learning. We're learning about the brain. We're learning about relationships. And this is a critical piece of being a leader and building your company. And I think it's a fresh perspective and really, really great. So thank you for taking the time to share that with my listeners.
Thank you for having me here. It was really fascinating to talk about this topic.
Great. Awesome. Well, thanks again. Take care. If you guys enjoyed the show, leaving a review is the best way to help others find it, second only to sharing it directly with your friends and family. Thanks so much for helping get the word out. Hit me up at brandon@readysetstartuppod.com if you have additional questions about a topic I covered, Have suggestions about another area you'd like to see me dig into, or just want to say hi? Please reach out. I'd love to get in touch. Keep imagining, keep creating, keep inspiring your spheres of influence with what you're passionate about. The world may just need that dream that's in your head. See you next time.
Resonate.